went to Shanghai this month for a business trip, and oh my goodness, it reminded me so much of how amazing food and hospitality are in Asia. Also, I haven't been back in Shanghai since 2019, which is pre-COVID, and being there really felt like a walk down the memory lane of the times that I lived in Asia. So now that I'm back in New York, and yes, I have this new view, which I will tell you more about in a little bit, I want to make a video to actually compare and finally rank all the cities that I've lived in 16 categories. Yes, you heard me right, 16 of them. Throughout my 20s, everyone has been asking me, what is the best city that you've lived in? Which one is your favorite? This is a video that attempts to answer those questions, and also a great reflection for myself on what I loved and disliked so much about each of these cities. Hello! Welcome to Coffee with Minnie. I'm Minnie, your favorite Gemini from New York. I lived in Singapore, Hong Kong, and New York City in my 20s, and I'm now living in New York City working in a multinational company. Now let's get into the 16 categories that we're gonna dive in and rank these cities one by one. Number 1, cheap eats. This is cheap, affordable, and casual dining that does not feel sad. It's hard, but I think I'm gonna have to give it to Shanghai. And in Hong Kong, yes, you have the canteen food, which is Ta San Tang. You get really amazing selection of cheap, casual food throughout the city. And in Singapore as well, you have these hawk centers, which are these food markets and food stalls that bring all kinds of cultures across East Asia and Southeast Asia, and you just get the crazy variety like you would have seen in Crazy Rich Asians. You can actually get all of these dishes for as cheap as $3. I'm sorry, New York. I like a good halal. I do my street food from time to time, but just can't compare. And in Shanghai, I think you really won because one, I think it's even cheaper, where you can get noodles and breakfast foods and items for less than $1 sometimes, still to this day. And as an additional perk of this video, I'm gonna give you my personal favorites when it comes to casual dining. So here you go. 2, fine dining. If you're the posh, elegant diner, here's some fun facts on Michelin-starred restaurants in all of these 4 cities. Top 1 city that ranks in terms of the count of Michelin-starred restaurants is really astonishing. It has 77 star restaurants, including 7 3 Michelin-starred restaurants. Wow. And second place, following shortly after, 69 Michelin-starred restaurants, including 5 3-star restaurants. Third place, 52 and 2 3 stars. And finally, 42 and 3 3-star restaurants. Drum roll please. Winner is Hong Kong. The second place is New York City. I'm honestly personally surprised by how many Michelin-star restaurants are in Hong Kong, given that it's really a tiny island. But regardless, congrats Hong Kong, you got this one. And number 3, dollar per square footage. By that I mean, in these 4 cities, how much square footage can you get with $1 or $1,000? What I did was I looked at all of the 1-bedroom apartments in relatively central locations in all of the cities and looked at how big of an apartment you can get. And the winner is Shanghai. So in Shanghai, you can actually rent a 1-bedroom apartment with just $1,000 US, and the apartment could be as big as 900 square feet, or on average 700 to 900 square feet. And that gives you around 800 square feet per $1,000. Other side of the spectrum, you have Hong Kong, which is only 140 square feet per $1,000. That is small, and I can attest to it. Singapore, New York, better, but also on the very small side, about 175 square feet per $1,000 in New York City. And as you can see, I'm living currently in a different apartment because I am at my friend's place, Upper East Side, in transition between my 2 apartments. And this is a 1-bedroom apartment, about 500 square feet. Monthly rent is $3,400, and that is pretty on par with average in most locations in Manhattan. And I've spent all my 20s in these amazing shoeboxes around the world. Number 4, salary and cost of living. This one probably is an episode on its own because it's very, very difficult sometimes to measure the salaries on its own, the cost of living on its own in various categories, and most importantly, your disposable income, because sometimes Doesn't really matter how much you earn or how expensive the subway is. It really comes down to how much you're able to save and invest with the money that you have. And of course, there are many other factors to consider. For example, if you work in corporate and have regular salary, or if you're an entrepreneur running your own business, so you see finances very differently. This one gets really tricky, but I think I am gonna have to give a tie to two of these cities. It is Hong Kong and Singapore. This may be a little surprising to people, but I do think number one major factor is the tax rate. The effective maximum personal income tax rate in Hong Kong is 17%, versus in Singapore, it's around 17 to 24, depending on your band, which are both significantly lower than what you would be paying in New York City in every band. And in Shanghai, while in most Chinese companies, you do not see how much tax you're paying actually, because you only get your salaries post-tax through the company, it is usually between 20 to 40% depending on your band, despite the much cheaper cost of living. And I did talk a little bit more about the job opportunities, taxes, and so on in my previous video, so do check it out if you haven't. Number 5, getting around in public transportation. I think I'm gonna have to give it to Hong Kong again. And the reason being, number one, public transport. Both systems in Singapore and Hong Kong, actually in Shanghai as well, are so much newer versus your 120-year-old New York metro. Obviously, the infrastructure is going to be newer, a bit more reliable in general. Also in Hong Kong, finding a cab everywhere is actually quite common for anyone in their 20s, because the starting price is $3 or $4, and from Hong Kong, you can get to the airport from the central downtown areas in less than 45 minutes without traffic. So usually you would be paying less than 400 Hong Kong dollars, which is less than $50 to get to the airport. And mind you, the airport is amazing. It is efficient, quiet, clean, and it just gives you a sense of comfort when you travel. I think Singapore is quite up there. I will say the taxi culture is just a little bit easier in Hong Kong. You can just hail down a taxi, call an Uber on the street, much like New York. Versus Singapore, sometimes the wait is a little bit longer. In Shanghai, the traffic does get a little insane. Number 6, adjacent travel access. This is not important to every person, but if you're an expat or are who is living abroad, you know the pain to have to travel all the time. Or if you're just a travel enthusiast living in a city, you want to be able to get to the airport or travel around quickly so that you could get all your weekend adventures in. So this one, I'm gonna have to give it to Singapore, just by the sheer number of countries and cities that you can get to by air at a very affordable rate. For example, Singapore to Bali is an hour and a half, to Phuket is less than 2 hours, and you can get all of these tickets for less than $100 US. And $100 US these days in New York. Yeah, I could barely take a train to Boston. That's fine. And I think Hong Kong is honestly close up there because the variety of places you could travel to in Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, in Southeast Asia, and everywhere in China, you could probably get to places in under than 3 to 4 hours easily. Number 7, weather. Ooh, this one gets very personal, but I think I am ranking in this video by the number of days a year that you could be outside comfortably. And the winner goes to a tie. Yes, I think maybe I'm biased, but I'm gonna give this one to New York and Hong Kong in a tie. Yes, it's quite funny. Out of the 4 places, New York and Hong Kong are really the 2 cities that have the worst natural hazards and disasters throughout the year, like typhoons and crazy snowstorms and so on. But in the seasons where those things are not happening in both cities, I do think you can be out and about in a very comfortable temperature, doing happy things a lot more easily than the other 2. The temperature is 15 to 25 degrees Celsius or 60s and 70s in Fahrenheit. So extremely comfortable for more than 6 months of the year. And in New York, if you take out the 6 months of winter, and summer being really hot at times, like this year, I'm filming this on 5th of July and I am still melting from the heat from yesterday. Other than that, you can still be around essentially every year from April, May to November, and comfortably enough for me, who usually prefers a little bit of crispy, chill, and dry air. Number 8, making friends from zero. So this is more tailored to an expat or someone who is moving to one of these cities for the very first time. You probably have 1 or 2 acquaintances, but not really many friends. So which one would I think is the easiest to make friends? I think I'm gonna give it to Singapore. Yes, Both in New York and Hong Kong, I do think the nightlife in terms of the bar scene, restaurant scenes, it's a lot more happening. You have a very, very young and extremely energetic demographic that allow you to actually meet people very easily in those scenes. But I picked Singapore only because it's one of those places, number one, English speaking, and number two, it is a little bit more family friendly and people are at all different stages of their lives. So if you're there to actually make genuine connections and meet people within the expat community, you might actually have better luck in meeting people that genuinely care for you and could be your long-term friend. And in Shanghai, I've never had a difficult time, but understanding for someone who doesn't speak Chinese, it is going to take some navigating to really be able to adapt. I will caveat that it obviously also depends on what kind of friendships and network that you're looking for. Singapore, I do think after a couple months, a couple years, you do notice that your circle starts to be very, very stable, very small, and it can feel hard to meet new people after a certain period of time. Number 9, work-life balance. This one, the winner is New York. I know, one of the most workaholic cities in the world. How does it win? Well, depending on what you're comparing it to. I will say in general, being in the West, in Europe, in the US, although very different comparison, versus Asia, I think people have a stronger sense of personal life. My personal experience working in Hong Kong and New York is also that in Hong Kong, there is somehow a culture of staying in the office to a certain time. You almost have that sort of unconscious expectation just to be there no matter on what day and how much work you have. Versus in New York, I do think people have the liberty to prioritize, where if it was the day before a holiday coming up, you will see people start departing in the afternoon because they have a longer commute to go home, or they just want to take the time to celebrate. Well, caveat, this depends on your industry, stage of your career, the exact job you're in, and your personal bar of what working hard looks like. And in Shanghai, it is actually extremely competitive these days for salaried jobs, whether it's tech, finance, or everything in between. There's a culture called 996, which is working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. There is not much weekends or personal time left after that. Number 10, digital access and digital life. What I mean by this, and this is an unusual thing that people consider when they move to a new city, but I do think it matters a lot to your day-to-day life. It's just how convenient things are, how digital things are, and how easily you can get access to things online. And for this one, I think you guessed it, I'm gonna have to give it to Shanghai. Because in China, everything is about apps. Having done product management in the US, and I look at all these digital products in China, it does look like they're just churning out features day and night, every hour, and the consumer experience is wonderful. For example, I recently went to do a physical checkup in China, and everything from registration to linking up health insurance to getting your physical checkup report to contacting the doctor, everything was built into this mini program in WeChat, which is the mega powerful app that everyone uses for messaging and all. But all of that healthcare system is built into this mini program that you can use within the app. Anything e-commerce is just wild. Delivery, for example, what's similar to Whole Foods delivery or Instacart when you need groceries delivered to your door. In China, which is thanks to the sheer power and cheap labor, things like Taobao, which is the Amazon equivalent, you could buy a bazillion things that gets transported from the most northern part of China all the way to the south in 2 days' time. And among the rest, I think Hong Kong, Singapore, New York all have their strengths and weaknesses when it comes to different areas of digital life, and I think they're kind of on par. Hi.